particularly as women, we know we've all been through some fun times, some interesting times, and definitely had times where we've had to rise up through the ashes. So we settled on this idea of the Phoenix panel, and you kindly offered to host this. A brilliant presentation for those young folk out there. So I think I jokingly called it the middle-aged advice panel. Middle-aged old ladies advice panel. So I am going to hand over to you, Angela, and I'm going to turn myself off and stop talking.
Don't go yet. I need to make sure that people can hear me. Give me a nod if you can hear me or something. Yeah, I am a bit old. Noise coming from mine. No. Okay. A little bit of background noise. Someone's got their Dyson running. Thank you so much for that introduction, Andrea. It does feel like we've been friends for a heck of a long time, and it's just been wonderful the whole ride through. And welcome everybody to today's Phoenix panel. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm also very excited to have these two wonderful women alongside me on the virtual stage. So you'll all know the Phoenix as a symbol of tenacity, longevity, regeneration through fire, and just a vibrant bird that is repeatedly renewed. And I think as Australians, we're no strangers to the power of fire and its capacity to destruct and destroy. But we're also familiar with the laws of nature and how after fire we get new life and new landscapes and new possibilities. And sometimes from these charred remains, we get rebirth and personal transformation. In fact, I want to tell you a funny story. So a few years ago, I was visiting home and I wanted to bring some Australian native plants back here to my garden in Bahrain. And so I popped into Flower Power and I picked up some Australian native seeds. And they said, well, no, you've got to buy this other packet as well. If you want to buy the seeds, you've got to buy this other packet, otherwise they won't germinate and, you know, it won't work. I'd never heard of this, but okay, fine. So you have to buy this starter pack as well as your seeds, and that's how you get them going in your garden. Turns out that what was in this starter pack was actually ash. Yep, that's it. It was actually ash, so that you combine it with the seeds and it actually replicates the impact of a bushfire. And that's how these beautiful Australian natives that, I'm sorry, did not work in my garden, actually bring forth new life. And I thought that was just a wonderful metaphor to the kind of things we're going to be talking about today. Because, you know, we know that in talent, we regenerate, our businesses regenerate and ask and demand new things of us over time. And as talent professionals, few of us, if any, are going to escape the experience of being burned at work. We all have failures and experiences which bring us some shame to recall. They're going to be the last of the dinner party stories that we roll out. Talking about those times when you've had your feet held to the flames, when you've come under fire, you've felt in the line of fire, you might have jumped from the frying pan into the flames. That happened to me. Maybe you were fired, or maybe you burned from rage or embarrassment. You may have just experienced, like I have, the barren landscape that comes after burnout. We're not alone. And here's the interesting thing. Talk to anyone who's been through these kinds of experiences, and they'll also tell you that out of those really unfortunate situations, those painful, dark days, they received some unexpected gifts. And yes, it was hard, and yes, it was awful, and maybe they don't ever wish it had happened in the beginning. But these horrible experiences also ignited a change in them. And they shifted their mindset, their careers. They got new understanding, new perspectives, maybe a whole new career. And this is what I'm interested in today. Because just like as the phoenix gets new life after the flames, when we go through these experiences at work and we make the choice, that's a deliberate use there, we make the choice to learn and do things differently. That's when transformation and change and sometimes a whole new life can come for us. So out of these deeply personal lessons, these unfortunate situations, I want to bring our guests in today to share their story. So it's a little unusual, I know. Most people come on board to talk about the wonderful things they've achieved, their accolades, their credentials and all that great thing. And I've asked my two brave speakers today to be a little more vulnerable than that, and to share with you those instances in life that haven't gone so well and what they took away from it. Because I think it's from these instances in our careers and in our lives that we learn the most. In fact, I know it to be true. And my goal today is one, to share some interesting stories of some fabulous women, but also to give you a sense that you're not alone, that when the days are dark and you think, how did I possibly get in this place and how can I get out, that it is possible. And that actually not only is it possible, but things can be amazing and better and different and new, and you can too as a result. And I think fundamentally connection is important to us as humans. It's how we get a shared sense of understanding and how we also understand ourselves. I love to connect people. It's part of what got me into this business, I think. And so that's what I also want to do, to connect you all today. So on that note, I am going to introduce my two wonderful panelists, Sukhi Sudarshan and Marty Wilson. So Sukhi, let me tell you about her. Sukhi's someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last couple of years when I actually helped convince her to join EY. She's an HR leader with over 25 years of progressive and comprehensive international experience in all areas of HR in the services industry. She's a visionary and global leader with expertise in talent acquisition and management, designing HR solutions, global delivery models, organisational transformation and transactions and client relations. Sukhi set up businesses from scratch in the areas of TA for clients across APAC, AME, Europe, and the Americas. And today, Sukhi leads the global shared services talent acquisition function, which puts her in charge of teams based in Argentina, the Philippines, China, Poland, and India. And just to give you an idea of the scale of the work Sukhi's team delivers, we were chatting last week and she just happened to mention that they've hired about 11,500 people so far this year. Yep, 11,500, with about, I think, was it 5,000 offers outstanding at the moment and about another 8,000 jobs vacancies listed. So there's quite a lot going on in Sukhi's team's world. But that's not all. Sukhi's also a happiness and mindfulness coach, and she trains children and students in her free time. So with all of this going on, I am just delighted that Sukhi is free to join us today from her home in Bangalore. Now, my second guest is Marty Wilson, and Marty joins us from Hong Kong, where she's worked and lived for over 5 years. And before this, Marty spent several years living in London, working in professional services, in-house talent acquisition, which, as you know, we heard Andrea talk about before, had a wonderful reputation. Marty's had an impactful career in the field of TA, and in 2015, she was one of a handful of leaders involved in launching a brand new legal resourcing business in Asia for her employer, Konexo. People who worked with Marty say she's excellent at building strong relations and has a sixth sense for understanding what people's interests are and what brings them meaning and fulfillment at work. And in addition to being masterful at what she does, Marty understands the nature of being a new kid on the block in a strange land, as do I, and the blessed insights and isolating lows of what it means to be an expat. And as a business leader, Marty knows what it takes to launch a new practice in uncharted territory and face the challenges of being on the hook for its incubation, startup, and success. So I am delighted to welcome you both. Thank you for joining us on this very first Phoenix panel and for having the courage to tell us about the things that didn't go so well. How are you feeling?
Good, excited to be a part of it. Thank you, Angela.
Great. Sukhi, let's come to you first. Could you share with us your Phoenix story?
Sure, Angela. I mean, I've probably one of the tough moments, I would say, in my whole career of 25 years. Just to give a little background, you know, I was with Accenture for a long time, probably 1/3 of my career, I had my own credibility and doing very well there, doing different roles. And then I suddenly get this opportunity with Standard Chartered Bank on, setting up the internal captive for talent acquisition. And I really jumped at it because I thought it's something that I need to do a lot of things by myself. Instead of having a great experted teams that I used to have in Accenture. So I thought it could be a challenge for myself. And jumped at that opportunity, moved in there, joined them, quite excited about the whole planning, and it's a global transformation project. And not just a couple of months into it, and all those sponsors who hired me for this job moved on from the organization. And I was with a new set of leaders, with a new set of priorities. And I was just given a role to handle about 40 people doing a little bit of an admin work. This is like going back to the first 2 years of my career kind of a thing. I mean, after about 18 years of experience. And I was like in a situation, really didn't know what to do because whatever is happening is not of my interest, and there is nothing that I can contribute because it is absolutely admin work, like any back office work that you would have. It's more of filing and scanning papers, and that's what my team does. And I'm just sitting there watching them, didn't know what to do. How do I contribute?
So hold on, you'd left a successful career at Accenture where you are doing client-facing work, setting up global talent acquisition functions to come to Standard Chartered, and the job you thought you were going to do had suddenly shrunk by 1,000%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And
the
how soon was this after you joined?
Changed.
Whoa. And was this in your first few months?
Yeah, I mean, when you start your career right after your college, this is how you start. I mean, screening all the paperwork of candidates who are applying, and then, putting them in the right folder, sending them thank you emails for applying, those kind of a job. And that's what my team was actually doing, about 40 of them, with probably 20 people's work. So everybody had enough time to do even this job, and there's nothing much. So it kind of shook me up, definitely. There have been days that I've gone back home and cried every night with a fear that did I really, screw up my career? Did I spoil it? Because I don't see a growth path. I don't see any kind of, a different role that I could find. And I was a little lost. So I did that for almost 7-8 days, every night going back home and crying without knowing. And then I think after that taking off all those fear and emotions, that's when I kind of shook up and said, okay, now it's up to me to decide what I want to do. Either sit and regret or change it for me, right? Anyway, I consider transformation and transition as my strength, then why not do that in my own life, right? So that was the thing. And so there were quite a lot of advices from friends and families to say, okay, it's enough. I mean, if you don't like it, look out, move on, find another role in different organizations and things like that. And that's not what I wanted, because I just moved after 13 years in an organization, and then about 4 or 5 months moving again. I didn't want that kind of a change in my profile. I had taken the decision to join, then why not make the best out of it? Because the organization is good, then why not make so that was the moment, I think. And I started putting a plan and started trying to convince the leadership with my vision, my thought, what is that we can do? Definitely was not a priority, but I had to go a little further, reaching out to all our global leaders. And I used to be based out of India at that point of time, and I had to reach out to our global leaders in UK and I had to be really persistent, keep going back and sharing my vision to them. What is that I want to do? How do I want to do? And what I had to keep reminding myself was all that credibility that I've earned is with Accenture, and I've left it there. This organization, nobody knows me. So I need to build that in. So to build that in, I had to take baby steps. So I started giving them, some smaller, out of my bigger vision, the smaller quick wins, low hanging fruits, which I can do and make that difference for each different countries. And that's how I had to build that. And, the long story short, it took a 1.5 year, but finally could convince and move 72 countries TA into the hub and create that captive across for Stand Chartered.
72 countries?
That's right. 72 countries moved their talent acquisition into the hub, 3 hubs of Bangalore, Poland, and China, that is in Tianjin. So, but it took 1.5 years for me to reach there.
Wow. And you just told this wonderful story with this glorious smile on your face. And I know from having talked to you that this was actually a really tough time. You had been sold a fantastic opportunity. The stakeholders who supported you vanished in your early days, and you then had to do something you were never, ever prepared to come in and do. So you said that you just realized your strengths, pulled up your bootstraps and started to make small incremental changes to get people's attention. But who helped you along the way? Who was part of your support network just to help you realize this is the right thing to do?
I think the best thing that I did was connecting to my global leaders. And we had, or rather we still have them, some of them, wonderful set of women leaders in UK, CHRO, then CHRO, the current CHRO, and a couple of other ones. So, and they had connect either with Accenture or my clients of Accenture, which is Unilever and Heinz Kraft. And so they did a quick check, and they got to know the kind of work that I've done in both in Accenture and in our clients. And I think that's what gave them a confidence. So they really supported me.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with allies and people who get the change the difference you can make. I can imagine how that would sustain you and give you the confidence in some ways to what you can actually make happen. And thinking about, you said you went home many days in tears. I am familiar with that experience. When you think about this moment in your life, this Phoenix moment, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot were the flames really? How intense an experience was this for you when you look back?
I would say quite high. I can even give 10 out of 10, or at least about 9, because that moment, my feeling was that my career is finished. It's done, is one feeling. The other feeling was the guilt, because Accenture was really trying hard to retain me, and they gave me wonderful roles within to move. And I was stubborn to tell my leaders, no, I'm moving out. I need to learn something new because I've been here for 13 years. So there was a huge guilt that, that why did I do this when I had some good roles in hand? And that feeling of, how stupid you are because you made wrong decisions in life, kind of a feeling. So all this was mixed feeling. And probably that's why I was so emotional, because generally I'm not a very emotional person. So I don't break down so easily, but that was a surprise even for my family and friends, because I stopped talking and lock up myself every night thinking, what next? So that period was really difficult time.
Yes, that's tough, and that takes some real resilience to get through. And I'm sure that there's people listening who can really, resonate with your story. It does take a lot of courage and strength, and not just to get up one day, but also the next day and the next day. And just before we move on to Mardi, how would you say this particular experience shaped you as a leader?
Angela, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just saying, how would you say this experience shaped you as a leader?
I think it's changed me a lot, because I think I was in a very comfort position in Accenture. So I had quite a lot of, because I had earned that credibility from a very junior role, and I grew up. So I was like a baby there. All the leaders used to support me, and so I was very protected, and I could get a lot of opportunities. Never had a fear of failure and things like that. So, but here, everything I had to do it by myself, with absolutely no sponsors, earning the credibility, and that actually made me a lot more matured person. I feel that I can manage any kind of trims and challenges in life. I also knew what is actually an organization would look at when they want to make some changes. So a lot of business kind of a vision came in rather than your functional expertise, right? So that way, I think I've shaped up to be a much more a better leader and a business person now.
Great, thank you. Well, don't go too far, because we're going to jump to Mardi now and bring her in to share her Phoenix story, but we've got more questions for you too. And if there's any questions from the audience today, Andrea can help us to cover those. Mardi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hoping my sound's okay. I think I've had some advice, but I'm just going to have to push through, I think, with sound.
Okay, no worries. Tell us your story. Tell us about the thing that didn't go quite as planned.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go in a different direction to Sukhi and actually go quite personal with grief and loss. And I feel it's quite important because people don't hear about loss much, or how people deal with grief in the workplace, and so I think there's a lot of value in knowing more and having a better understanding. So in 2018, I was expecting my second baby, and unfortunately we lost that baby at 21 weeks. And I think prior to that point, I sort of thought babies, once you got past the 12-week mark, you're fine. You'd have a lovely, healthy baby. But we went along for our 20-week scan, and at that point, the doctor had a couple of questions, and sort of the medical appointment went on longer than I expected. I had to go back to work and do a client presentation, which was one of those presentations where anything that could go wrong went wrong, and I had a room full of clients, significant clients for us, with this presentation that just was not going right. And it was just one of those days where everything would go wrong. What then followed for us was a couple of weeks full of appointments. At the same time, we had a flight booked to New Zealand, which was supposed to happen just after my 20-week scan. We were dealing with flight cancellations, doctor's appointments, hospital schedules, having conversations with work, and also having conversations with family to break the news that we were sadly going to lose our baby. And after this all happened, we lost our baby, I took 2 weeks off work medically. Sort of physically, the doctors had signed me off for 2 weeks, and that was my physical recovery. And I was in, and so I sort of went back to work, and actually, in hindsight, I'd probably take longer. But also part of what I wanted to do was really not think about the situation I was in, and work for me was my escape from that, where I could just focus on. I think what got me through that was probably the flexibility from my work. There were definitely days where I just went, I need to pack up and go home. I'm not going to cope with this. And so I had that flexibility, and I think I had that understanding from my manager, from my employer. But until you're going through a situation with grief, it's a very bizarre, unusual, alien landscape to have to navigate. And I think, you know, similar to Sukhi, but in a completely different way, I would rate my Phoenix experience probably as on a scale of 1 to 10, up there at that 10 level. But I don't think I realized it at the time. I think it's with hindsight that I reflect on it and think, actually, now that I've got a bit of distance, what I was going through was really quite tough.
Got goosebumps listening to you, Marty. That is, you know, that's so brave of you to bring this up, because you're completely right. I can count on one hand instances where I have had colleagues where grief has openly been discussed. But we all know this happens to all of us much more often than we let on. So you said that work for you helped you recover because it enabled you to think about something other than what was happening in your body and your emotions. Who else would were part of your team just to support you through the transition? Because it must have taken some time.
Yeah, and there definitely are people that sort of stand out for me. I think when I did get back to work, my HR person was an absolute rock. She sat down and said, look, I'm strong, I can handle this, talk to me. And I did. I sat down and laid it all out, everything that we'd gone through. She'd also been fantastic in changing my holiday leave back to just, crediting that back to, and just taking out a whole lot of the little admin-y things that I didn't have to think about that then. I also, I'm sure I was offered employee assistance. Again, in hindsight, I would utilize that, but I think at the time I thought, well, that's for people with real problems. It's not me. I'm just going through a tough patch, but it's not for me. But I did also go to a baby. Friend had suggested that, and so what helped me is definitely hearing other stories and talking about it. The final thing that really helped me was the fact that a couple of years before, I had heard about another mother who had lost her baby in 2 weeks. So I felt like I wasn't the only one that this had happened to. And I could, and that's why I do think it is important to talk about, because otherwise this is such an isolating experience, and you do feel, am I the only one going through this? And I think coming back to work, and even with my family, I am okay talking with this. I do want to acknowledge it. I don't want it to feel as though this never happened to me. And you definitely come across the people who are not comfortable with a tough situation, and so they'll say nothing. And I came across that, and I understood it. And I think, Googling and reading, you hear other people's reactions and responses to grief. And I think that in the work context for me, I hadn't been talking about my pregnancy, and so it wasn't widely known. But the few people who did know, it's a tough thing. We're not having a baby anymore. But I didn't want it to suddenly be just something that people didn't talk about, because that was tougher than not acknowledging the fact that there had been a pregnancy and a baby and joy and hope and expectation, and now there was grief and loss instead.
Yes. So, gosh, well, thank you for sharing this experience. And although it's interesting to say, it was comforting to know you're not alone, because this is such a common thing, not just miscarriage itself, but grief, particularly with our aging workforce. We have responsibilities and caring, and in this last year, for so many people, we have faced unexpected grief. How has this experience shaped you as a leader? And yeah, I'll ask that question first before I jump onto another.
Yeah. I think it's made me more empathetic and more understanding that there are things people go through that they don't talk about. And, you will see CVs that have gaps and people won't say much. And, as a recruiter, we're asking people a lot of really personal questions. But then, after I came back, there was another lawyer, one of my candidates I was speaking with, who she herself went through a miscarriage. And by me acknowledging that or feeling I would want to have sort of had somebody be able to talk me through from their experience, it was another way of connecting and really understanding. People are human, and you don't always know the full stories of what's going on. So I think that was eye-opening for me. People talk about it, and it's just a word, but there's so much behind that. That I think as a leader and in the workplace, just understanding you don't always know what people are going through.
Yeah, everyone's got something. Thank you. I'm conscious of the time. We need to wrap it up. Now, Andrea, let me just ask you, have we had any questions that our guests would like to put to us? I'm not sure. I've got, oh, here we go. I've got another question for you both. I'll just ask it to you, and you can take turns to answer. And my final question. Oh, hello.
Oh, I keep forgetting to turn myself on. James Telfer is sharing with us about that we don't deal with grief well, and that it is something that we've hidden under the carpet. And Angela, you and I may remember when the coordinator also had to return to work after the stillbirth of her child, and we all had no idea what to do. And I think that the beauty of someone like Mardi sharing her story gives us an idea that asking the questions and approaching people and those sorts of things that make it so important. But also Sukhi's lovely story too about sitting in this job thinking you've made the world's biggest mistake, and again, not talking and not talking about it with people and having your family worry and those sorts of things. And I think, and now I'm just going to say, and a bit earlier on we had a talk about menopause, where a whole bunch of us opened up at, being menopausal women at the moment, and the impact that has on the workforce. And it's just this understanding that needs to come through everything we do, that we need to share these stories as well. And finding people's grief uncomfortable, as Sarah Wilkinson's beautifully saying. I'm just saying to someone, I'm sorry, I don't have the words, but moving on from that.
Yeah.
And Marty, I have just had to fix up my makeup again before I came on, because of course I cried tears for you again.
Andrea. It is exactly that, just sharing for people and hoping that it helps others.
Yeah, exactly. And I realised that I have put the wrong coloured glasses on. They're the glasses where I can see the screen as opposed to the ones that make me look good. So we do need to wrap it up because I'm sorry we started a little late, but I do need to wrap up.
Okay.
Ways for me are about it's okay that we make mistakes and we do come out the other end, but sometimes we've got to ask for help. We've got to let people know how we're doing and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I would love to thank all three of you so much. Sukhi, so glad to have met you. Now that you've told me that story, I have pegged you for one of our events to come on and tell a much broader story about how you built that talent acquisition function and how you manage 11,000 friggin' applications a day.
I love they're hires.
They're hires.
11,000 hires. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. 5,000 offers out. Yes, it's ridiculous. And everyone, Mardi is returning from Hong Kong in July, and we hope that she'll find a fantastic job here as well. So certainly I'll be doing everything I can to help her get settled into Australia. And the first thing will be to the Gold Coast to see you. And Angella, thank you so much. I always love how you interview and the way that you approach everything. And your words at the beginning were absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Lots of love.